I never imagined that the child I raised with love, sacrifice, and sleepless nights would one day look at me as if I were nothing more than a burden. When I think back to all the years I spent working overtime shifts, missing weekends, and denying myself small comforts just to make sure my daughter had the future she dreamed of, it almost feels unreal that everything would fall apart over something as small as $500. But life has a strange way of revealing truths we'd rather not see. My daughter, Emily, had always been bright, top grades, college ambitions, and dreams bigger than the small town life we lived. From the moment she first mentioned wanting to study out of state, I knew it would cost far more than I could comfortably afford. But I was a parent, and parents don't think in terms of affordability when it comes to their children's futures. They think in terms of responsibility. I worked long days as a contractor, picking up every extra job I could find. I saved every spare dollar. I cut my own expenses to the point where I hadn't bought new clothes in years. And by the time she graduated high school, I had saved almost $85,000, money I put toward her tuition, housing, books, and everything she needed to start a new life. I remember the day I transferred the last large payment. She hugged me tightly and said, "Dad, I'll make you proud." That moment alone made all the sacrifices feel worth it. Years passed and Emily graduated, moved to the city, and got a well-paying job. I was proud, really proud. She had a new apartment, new friends, a new lifestyle. We talked less, but I told myself that was normal. Kids grow up. They move on. They get busy. I didn't worry. Not then. Everything changed the month my knee injury got worse. Construction work is unforgiving on the body, and years of climbing ladders and carrying loads finally caught up with me. I needed a small procedure, nothing major, just something to keep me working. Insurance covered part of it, but I needed $500 to cover the rest. 500, not 5,000, not 50,000, just $500. I called Emily one evening. She answered after several rings, her voice distracted. "Dad, can we make it quick? I'm meeting friends." I explained everything, the injury, the bill, the fact that I was short on the payment. I wasn't asking for a gift. I even said, "I'll pay you back as soon as I can." There was a silence on the line long enough for me to think the call had dropped. Then she said, "Dad, you really need to learn to manage your money better. I can't keep bailing you out." I was stunned. Bailing me out. In 24 years, I had never taken a single dollar from her. Not one. I reminded her gently of that, but she brushed it off. She said she had financial goals, that she couldn't disrupt her budget, and that she had responsibilities. I hung up feeling smaller than I ever had in my life. 2 weeks later, I got a notice in the mail regarding my house, the house I had lived in for 30 years, the house Emily grew up in. Apparently, the loan I'd taken years earlier, one I had been faithfully paying for decades, had been refinanced. Except it hadn't been refinanced by me. Emily had convinced the bank that she was helping her aging father organize his finances. She had added herself to the deed. She had changed the terms. She had taken control. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. She calmly said, "Dad, you're not good with money. This is for your own protection. It'll be easier if I handle things from now on." I felt like the ground shifted beneath me. "You took my house," I whispered, unable to believe my own words. "No," she replied, "I secured it. If something happens to you, it won't get messy." But she wasn't protecting me. She was protecting her future, her inheritance, by taking ownership early. And what made it worse was that she had no guilt. No hesitation. No acknowledgement of what I had given up my entire life for her. The final blow came a month later when I received an eviction notice. My own daughter had decided she wanted to rent the house out for income. She didn't even deliver the notice herself. She emailed me, saying, "Dad, it's time for you to downsize. You can stay with a friend or look for something smaller." The words cut deeper than any physical injury. I had given her everything. I had believed in her when no one else did. I had sacrificed my comfort, my health, and my youth for her dreams. And now, when I needed the smallest fraction of help, she took the only thing I had left, my home. Looking at the empty walls on the day I packed my last box, I realized something painful. Love can be unconditional, but gratitude is not. Some children receive everything and still believe they owe nothing. Some hearts turn cold the moment they believe they no longer need you. I walked out of that house with tears in my eyes but a strange sense of clarity. I had lost my home, but I had finally seen the truth. And sometimes the truth, no matter how brutal, is the beginning of something new. When my daughter took my house away from me, it felt like the last thread connecting us had finally snapped. I kept replaying everything in my mind, every sacrifice, every late night shift, every time I skipped meals so she could have enough. I couldn't understand how someone I loved so deeply could hurt me so casually. It wasn't the money, it was the disregard, the coldness, the quickness with which she traded our relationship for her convenience. I knew I couldn't change what she had already done, but I also knew one thing for certain: I wouldn't let her walk over me forever. I moved into a small room above a mechanic's shop owned by my friend, Michael. The place wasn't much, one window, a single bed, and a little kitchenette, but it was mine. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Michael checked on me every evening, bringing meals and cracking jokes until I laughed again. It was that laughter, those small moments of peace, that made me realize something important. I had spent my entire life giving. Now it was time to protect what I had left. A few weeks later, I got a call from Emily. She didn't ask how I was doing or where I was living. She didn't ask how my knee surgery had gone. Instead, she launched straight into her reasons for calling. "Dad, the tenants want some repairs done before they move in. I need you to sign a couple of papers." I almost laughed. She had thrown me out, claimed I was irresponsible, taken the house for herself, and now she wanted me to help her with the paperwork. I told her I'd think about it. She sighed impatiently. "Dad, don't make this difficult. It's just a formality." A formality. That was all I had become in her life, a formality. I ended the call and sat for a long time, staring at the wall, thinking about how things had come to this. I had been passive for too long. I had let her dictate the narrative, let her act like everything she did was justified. But I knew something she didn't know: she had made one mistake in her clever plan. She had added herself to the deed, but she hadn't removed me. The house was still legally mine, even if she thought she controlled it. That night I made a decision. If she wanted to treat me like a stranger, I would treat the issue like business. Emotion had no place now. The next morning, I went to see a lawyer recommended by Michael. She was sharp, straightforward, and didn't sugarcoat anything. She listened to my story with raised eyebrows, and when I finished, she said, "She manipulated you. But she didn't do it as neatly as she thought. She explained everything clearly, step by step. Emily had taken advantage of my trust, but she hadn't legally secured the house the way she imagined. More importantly, she had violated several laws by refinancing without proper authorization. There were legal consequences, serious ones. I wasn't looking for revenge. I didn't want to ruin my daughter's life. I just wanted my home back, because it was the last piece of stability I had left. The lawyer filed the necessary paperwork. Emily received the notice a week later. My phone almost exploded with her angry calls and messages. "Dad, what are you doing? Why would you do this to me?" she shouted when I finally answered. "To you," I repeated quietly. "Emily, you took my home." She insisted she was only trying to help. That she was protecting my future. But her voice cracked when she spoke, not from guilt but from fear of losing the property she had claimed as hers. I told her the truth plainly. "You crossed a line, Emily. You didn't just hurt me, you treated me like I was disposable. That's not help." She tried to negotiate. Then she tried to guilt-trip me. When none of it worked, she became furious. She hung up on me, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel broken because of her anger. I felt calm. The legal process moved quickly. She had no solid defense. Eventually, the decision came: the house was mine again. Fully, legally, permanently. When I got the news, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't celebrate. I just felt relief. Like I had reclaimed not just the house, but a part of myself that had been lost for years. I thought about calling Emily, but I didn't. She had made her choices, and I had made mine. A week later, she sent me a long message filled with accusations, how I had embarrassed her, how her friends now knew she had been kicked off a property, how I had ruined our relationship. I read every word, then put my phone down without replying. You cannot ruin something that the other person walked away from long before you did. Months passed, and life slowly settled. My knee healed. I returned to lighter construction work. I fixed up my house myself, repairing what needed to be repaired, painting the walls, closing the years of emotional distance with each stroke of the brush. Sometimes I missed the little girl Emily used to be, the one who ran to me with scraped knees, who hugged me tightly on her first day of school, who cried when she didn't get the part she wanted in the school play. But that little girl was gone, replaced by someone who saw me as an obstacle instead of a father. The lesson I learned was harsh but necessary: love should never blind you to disrespect. Blood makes someone family, but behavior determines whether they deserve that place in your life. I didn't take revenge. I didn't seek to hurt her. I simply reclaimed what was mine and walked away from a relationship that had already ended in her heart. And sometimes the strongest thing a parent can do is let a child face the consequences of their own choices.